Have you ever heard music so powerful that it transformed you into a different person? What about into a beast? Not talking about a beast in the sheets either. I'm talking about a blood-drinking, raw meat-eating beast. I hope your answer's no, but if you said yes, comment what music made you like that. I'm very intrigued now. This is 2021's Bloodthirsty. Spoiler alert, while I might be giving you my opinion on the film, that's no substitute for watching it for yourself. Links to the film are in the description. And for those of you that need to hear this, this is just a movie. All stunts are for the sake of story and shouldn't be attempted on your own. No animals were harmed in the making of this film. Viewer discretion is advised. We open to the sounds of something moist getting torn apart. The sound's unsettling to hear. Then we see that it's just a girl eating raw meat outside from an animal. It turns out that it was Gray, and she wakes up from her dream to look at herself in the bathroom mirror. While there, she notices something strange in her mouth. And when she rinses off the blood from her fingers, her eyes seem to shift to an animalistic state. She reaches for her prescription pills, but then she decides to simply calm down first. The next day, she heads back to her psychiatrist, and he tells her that this is the worst time for her to come off her medication. He tells her that he's recommending her for psychotherapy, and after he questions if she's been drinking, she heads out for a photo shoot. Later at a photo shoot, Gray has to deal with the thoughts of paparazzi asking for the next record, and afterwards, another reporter asks her about her relationship with her girlfriend. After telling Gray that the world deserves to know about her private life, she slams the door in his face and gets ready to go home. Once home, Charlie sets the table for dinner, and she asks how her day went. Gray tries to blow it all off, but Charlie thinks that she likes the attention of the other girl fans. Gray then tells Charlie about Vaughn, who she thinks would be great to produce her next album. Charlie looks him up, and she notices that Vaughn was tried for murder of a previous singer. The next day, Charlie and Gray take a trip to Vaughn's property, and Gray runs over a bunny on the way. Once there, Vera escorts them inside, and she shows them to their room. Later on, Gray and Charlie walk around the house to investigate, and they find the sitting room where there's a piano and shelves with books lining them. Gray takes a seat at the piano and starts to play. Just as she starts to play, Vaughn comes in and introduces himself. After meeting Charlie and Gray, he tells them to make themselves at home, and Charlie heads back to the room to start her own paintings. Gray heads to the kitchen where she finds some beer, but she chooses something else to take her medication. That night, Gray and Vaughn have their first session, and he finds out about her process for creative thinking. Gray tells him that she thinks she's forcing her creativity, and he tells her that he can definitely help her with that. He thinks that she has to go deeper, and he tells her that everything works out better when she stops trying so hard. Sure enough, Gray takes that little pep talk and heads into the recording studio. She's definitely not a metalhead. Her style's like a Lana Del Rey mixed with Adele mixed with sad, slow, musical music. I'm not sure Vaughn and his murder trial are really the best option here. Vaughn can tell that things are tense with Gray, and he takes her outside to do sprints in the snow. She runs until she can't anymore, and Vaughn appears next to her without seeming like he's out of breath at all. They head inside to run the track again, and they just keep going again and again. Eventually, Vaughn gets tired of running it back, but eventually Charlie shows up and tries to tell him that she's done. Gray ends up hallucinating herself with claws, and she agrees with Charlie. After Gray lies down, Charlie runs into Vaughn, and they have a nice little discussion on how Vaughn handles his clients. He ends their discussion by stating that he might just know her girlfriend better than she does. I can't be too mad at Vaughn here. Charlie is messing with his work, and quite honestly, she wasn't even invited. Gray just showed up with her, and she expected Vaughn to be alright with everything. Back up a bit, Charlie. While Gray sleeps, she has a nightmare that she's running from a predator outside. But when she wakes up, she hears someone playing the piano. She follows the music to a room where a recording's playing, and she talks to Vaughn about the girl he was tied to the murder for. That night, all three of them sit down for dinner, and he tells Gray that he knows everything about her thanks to her manager. He tells her that he had vegan options just for her, and he tells Charlie that he doesn't really leave the house because he has everything he needs. When he talks about how he doesn't really have visitors, it becomes clear that Gray and Charlie are thinking about Greta, the girl that he was tried for murdering. Vaughn goes over the specifics of what happened, and he grabs the gun from a table nearby. He holds the gun to his head and says that Greta killed herself, and he ends the conversation by promising Gray that he didn't kill her. When someone grabs a gun to show you how a suicide went, I don't really think that's somewhere you want to be stuck at without a lifeline. Charlie isn't really a great lifeline, but she's at least got common sense here. She heads straight to the room and starts packing. Of course, Gray defends Vaughn by calling him eccentric. Isn't that just how all psychopaths get described for a while? That evening, Gray goes to the bathroom, and she pulls a tooth out of her mouth. That night, she heads straight to the bed and gets it on with Charlie. After having a hallucination dream about herself holding the gun, she takes her pills and goes back to work. Vaughn and Gray listen to what they've worked on, and Vaughn tells her that they should go in a different direction. Gray plays a little bit of what she's been working on, and Vaughn absolutely loves it. They sit together on the bench to go over new lyrics, and Vaughn takes a sniff. He tells her that he smells something primal on her, and he wants her to use it. Okay, creeper. That wasn't even a smooth way to play that off. He just wanted a sniff? Red flag number who knows how many comes up when next he tells her that she doesn't need to take her medication. The next day, Charlie finds the pills in the trash, and she confronts Gray on why they were there. Gray tells her that she doesn't need them anymore, and she just wants to feel normal again. When Gray brings up Vaughn, it becomes clear that this wasn't all Gray's idea. Then Charlie asks about dinner, and Gray tells her that Vaughn wants to eat with her alone. That evening at dinner, Vaughn and Gray connect over a meal where he offers her a bite of meat. She takes a bite, and she actually seems to like it. To top it off, he offers her some absinthe. This is the real stuff too, apparently. He's over here talking about the green fairy and he's telling her to relax. If it's real, she's about to really relax and have a great time. Oh yeah, it's real. Either that or her lack of medication is really kicking in. Then, Vaughn starts to talk sweet nothings to Gray, but she ends up lashing out and biting him in the face. She immediately thinks that she should pack and leave. But when Vaughn gives her the chance to rethink things, she tells him that she really wants to finish the album. Later that night, after everyone's asleep, Gray sneaks into the kitchen, where she grabs a plate of raw meat. She turns the plate up and drinks the blood from the plate. The next day, Gray heads into the recording studio with a new inspiration. She sits at the keyboard to sing the new song to Vaughn, and it turns out to be a hit. Honestly, I actually kind of liked it too. I went straight to Spotify to see if the song was real or just part of the clip. It's a real song. You can go listen to it right now. The next morning, Gray wakes up from a fast-paced nightmare, and she heads to the piano in the sitting room. Charlie comes in to check on her and see if she'd like to play her new song for her. Gray obliges, and Charlie seems to regret asking. She tells Gray that her music is completely different than it used to be, and it was absolutely beautiful. She never stops looking wary, though. Later on, Vera comes in to take Vaughn's empty plate, but he tells her that he's still hungry. She asks him what he'd like, and he tells her the usual. Vera marches off, and she actually heads out to pick up a hitchhiker in the snow. When she gets back to Vaughn's property, she tells the woman to run, and the hitchhiker runs through the snow. This is that movie The Hunt, but this time it's just a lonely Playboy producer and his nanny. It seems to lose some of its horror aspect then. I actually wasn't completely sure what direction the movie would go in the end, and I'm still not sure. Poor hitchhiker though. Back in the house, Gray and Charlie are getting it on again, but Gray actually claws Charlie's back. Meanwhile, Vaughn laughs maniacally in his chair while covered in the hitchhiker's blood. Gray licks the blood from her fingers, and later that night, she goes to the kitchen to look for the plate of meat again. It turns out not to be there anymore, so she wanders onto the grounds to find something on her own. Eventually, she finds a bunny. Again, no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. After eating the bunny, Gray hops in the shower to clean up, and she smiles. The next morning, Charlie and Gray sit on the edge of the bed, and they sit in silence until Charlie mentions just leaving. Charlie wants Gray to get herself right, but Gray can't imagine leaving until the album's done. Charlie tries to plead with her, but later, Gray heads to the piano to drink and write another song. Eventually, Vaughn comes in, and he brings Gray the lyrics to Greta's last song. She doesn't think she can do it, but Vaughn takes her outside to get some air. He thinks that she's trying too hard to be nice for everyone. Vaughn catches a little mouse and puts it in Gray's hands to give her the decision to be the predator he knows she can be, or the prey that coddles everyone. Again, no animals were harmed in the making of this film, but she definitely becomes the predator here. Mouse is gone. To top that off, she swings at Vaughn. She's like a crazy little werewolf beast singer. I kinda love it. Later on, Charlie tells Vaughn to stay away, but he definitely hits a nerve when he tells her that Gray will leave her. Charlie heads straight to the bedroom to pack, and she tells Gray that they're leaving. Well, Gray doesn't want to leave, and she makes that very clear. Eventually, Gray actually pins Charlie against the wall. Gray watches as Charlie drives off, and Vaughn appears behind her. When Gray leaves the window, she goes to the book with Greta's lyrics, and she tells Vaughn to admit to killing Greta. Vaughn agrees to killing her, and he explains how he took the gun out of Greta's hand and shot her before she could shoot him. He then goes on to tell Gray that he had a baby with Greta. This story's getting crazy. Out of nowhere, he tells Gray that she's actually his long-lost daughter. He dropped that bomb on her and there was almost no foreshadowing on the whole family ties moment at all. Naturally, Gray's perfectly cool with all of this, and she goes to the recording studio to record Greta's final song. Obviously, also, this song is awesome too. Just go and listen to the whole soundtrack actually, it's great. While Gray records, Charlie stops driving and calls Gray to get no answer. After thinking about it, she turns around and drives back to Vaughn's house. Vaughn asks Gray to stay with him, but Gray wants to go back to her life now that the album's done. She swears that she isn't like Vaughn, and she leaves the studio without another word. She packs up her things and heads outside. Vaughn watches the fire crackle, and soon, Vera comes in to tell him that Gray is gone. Vaughn tells her to bring her back. Sure enough, the next thing we see is Gray waking up in the recording studio. Vaughn appears, and he tells her that he wants to help her. He puts on some of her music and leaves her alone. Suddenly, she starts to transform. After transforming, we see that Gray really is a werewolf, and she tries to get out of the recording studio without any success. Meanwhile, Charlie gets her car stuck on the side of the snowy road, and she can hear an animal circling the car. A hand breaks through the window, and we cut to Gray waking up in a bloody towel. Actually, her whole bathroom is covered in blood. She runs out to find Charlie's car on the side of the road, and she rushes over to Charlie's body. While Gray holds Charlie's body, she hears Vera coming down the road with a gun. Gray hops into the car to try and get it unstuck, but Vera shoots at her. Gray throws the car in drive and runs over Vera. To top it off, she throws it in reverse and makes sure a couple of times that Vera's done before she drives back to Vaughn's house. Always double tap. Gray heads inside and grabs the revolver from the table as she looks around for Vaughn. She finds him in his chair by the fireplace, and he tells her that he wasn't the one that killed her. He finally tells her that they're werewolves, and she can see that she really did kill Charlie. Gray turns the gun on herself, but when she turns it back on Vaughn, he transforms. He lunges at her and she fires a shot. Eventually, she makes her way back to her therapist, and he tells her that he's concerned with how she's dealing with this trauma. Gray tells him that she's completely better, and she goes on to perform in front of an audience. Another banger song. And now she's embraced her inner animal. I love werewolf and vampire movies where the so-called new monster just embraces the animal they are. Stop acting like you're sad about being a mythological monster. Everyone wants that at some point. Gray finishes her song to wondrous applause, and she takes a deep breath. Then, the credits roll. This is a slow burner, but a really good one when you actually watch it through. And of course, I gotta mention the soundtrack again. Go listen to it too. I definitely say, give it a shot. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.